All right, go ahead.
Hello, everybody. This is Esra Ogut, and we are with Superior Self.
Ezra, thank you so much for taking the time.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
So, your new book, Money Does Grow on Trees, The Myths We Create and Live By, it was very fascinating. I liked it. I enjoyed it. Anytime an author mentions allegory of the cave, like I love that. Like I just love philosophy. I love that. So tell me, does money really grow on trees? Because I've heard that my entire life that it does not.
Well,
Um,
I think we've all heard that our entire lives. In Turkey, we have a different saying. We say you can't find money on the streets. But, that sounds kind of weird in English. So, the English version of that. I mean, I think we have all of us have that training from very early on that the resources are limited. So we grow up expecting the resources to be limited.
sure.
And we
Well,
experience that.
so how did I'm reading some of your story. It's very fascinating. Um, you move out west to LA when you first come to the States, and your dream, I guess, was to be in film producing
Mm-hmm.
or making,
Mm-hmm.
acting, writer. So you do I guess, the traditional path of that, right? You go out west to, I guess, Hollywood or LA and start working jobs that don't really define who you are and who you want to be, just to pursue your dreams. Like, take me through that.
Exactly.
What did that look like?
Well, you know, um, I want to start from how that journey started because I grew
Sure.
up in Europe. Although I was born in Turkey, I grew up in Europe, like a different country every 3, 4 years, and then I ended up in the States. And since I was in high school, I had this dream to be in the United States, although I had never come here as a tourist. Because everything about the Constitution, freedom of thought, freedom of speech, you're innocent till proven guilty, some of the stuff that's getting lost fast in America was very fascinating for somebody who had grown up in Turkey and in Europe. And there was just no possibility because my parents didn't want to send me. I'm like so young. They don't want me to go that far away as a 23-year-old just fresh out of college. And so I graduated and I started working in a TV station. And about 8 months into working, I was just like, what am I doing? That's not the life I want to lead. And I'll never forget the moment I made the decision. And that concept is in the book as well. It's called the being choice. When we make a choice to reject something and to belong to something else, not just on an intellectual level, but with all of our being, all of a sudden all the doors of the universe open. So although it looked like it was impossible for me to come to the States, while I was pouring coffee in this job of mine, I'm like, you know what? I don't care. I'm just going to America. I don't care about the how. I am belonging to America. And shortly after, I found a scholarship. Shortly after, I figured out UCLA has a program that doesn't cost hundreds and thousands of dollars, a certification program. And before I could even understand what's going on, I was on a plane in 3 weeks,
Mhm.
to Los Angeles, to a country that I had never even visited as a tourist. It was a very moving journey for me.
I love the whole concept of, you call it whatever you want. I'm starting to, well, I'm not starting. I really, I have a lot of desires, right? And I was reading your book, and there's a difference, like you were talking about, with some of the guru concepts of desire and attachments, and talking about the Buddha and reaching enlightenment and having that desire for that. There's a nice little story or excerpt in there about or parable about a guru and a student. The guru's holding down the student and underneath the water, and like he almost drowns him, and like the guru lets go, and he's like, "Why'd you do that? Like, you almost drowned me." And he's like, "When you want, if you fight for that enlightenment like you did for that last breath, come see me." And
Yeah.
that's like the, I guess that's the X factor a lot of the time when it comes to desires. It's like you got to have that wanting, that yearning for not only creation of it, but like the the wanting to see it fulfilled, I guess. Like, I have desires. I have a couple things on my list that I want to see come to pass. but it's not like from an ego standpoint. It's not like, oh,
Yeah.
I don't want them, if they don't ever happen, whatever, I'm good. But the visualization that I do, the what I call creating that I do, like it's there, right? So I can feel it emotionally when I experience that in my creation mode. I think people get lost in that because they think that if I can just kind of think about it or I say it, then I'll have it. But it's in the feeling, right? Like that's the
Oh
key.
yeah, it's the key. I mean, if we can look at our, current reality as box A, let's say, and you want to get out of that box and belong to a new reality, which is also going to be another box, hopefully a more expanded one where your consciousness expands in the process of the journey. If you do not have a burning desire, the ego's job is so easy to get you back into your reality, because the ego's job is to anchor our old reality in place. So it has a lot of defenses so that we don't get out of what's familiar. So unless you have that burning desire, you don't even have a chance to get out of that box. But most people mix up desire, the term desire, with attachment. Desire is very powerful, it's very creative, it's very fiery. Like nothing happens without desire. The way we come to this planet is through the desire of our parents, So everything starts with the seed of desire. My mentor, Daryl Rutherford, he had a great kind of analogy or example in his book where he talks about a circus elephant that's chained, from his feet. And the only way he's going to break the chain is if you take, whatever he loves to eat and put it far enough in his desire to reach for the nuts or whatever elephants eat. That's what's going to break the chain of whatever our older reality was. So desire is, of course, very, very important. And somehow in America, because I also had a huge yoga background before I got into life coaching, I remember desire would always be kind of poo-pooed, like it's a bad thing, and then finally in India, I asked a yogi, and I said, in the West, they always make this desire kind of like a bad thing in yoga. What do you think about it? And he was like, well, that's ridiculous. If the Buddha didn't have the desire to be enlightened, he would have never gotten there. So it's strong desire minus attachment equals creation.
I love that because like that's what I've been struggling with for quite a bit, with that whole like, seeking spiritual enlightenment. It's like, is it bad to feel these things about these? It's not that I'm materialistic. It's not that I want to. I don't want money to purchase things because of the ego says I need to have these things. It's more so like to prove that we are these divine creators. Like we are this divine spark inside of us. And like, am I supposed to suppress that and become like what Ram Dass calls a horny celibate? Like, you know what I mean? Like, not that that's like what I'm trying to go after, but it's like,
that's really funny.
like, but that's what Ram Dass was like. He was like, yeah, I thought it was like spirituality was this, and you had to fit inside this box, and I just became this horny celibate because I was giving up sexual things because it was like these attachments, blah blah blah. It's like, well, for me, it's not that. It's do I do I not go after like you? Are you currently in Hawaii?
We just moved about 2 months ago back to LA, but we were in Hawaii for 4 years. Yeah.
So that's like in my vision, I'm sitting in Hawaii. Like I have a studio that oversees the beach, and it's not because of like materialistic wants. It's like when I when I when I'm there in my vision in my creation mode, like it feels great. I love it. I feel good. I feel my heart chakra open up, and I can feel it, and I can be there, and I can envision everything, all the details. If it ever happens, it's fine, whatever. But I do want it to happen, that desire for that to happen. And there's a lot of things that have to happen before that. But it's like, I want that because then it's like validation of like, yeah, man, like we are these beings of creation that are here in this dense reality. And we are truly creators. It's like we are in this training ground that's dense to help us maintain this level of focus and awareness. And it's like preparing us to expand our consciousness and awareness for other realities where everything is instant. because you
Yeah.
imagine if like you had these limited beings of consciousness that like aren't mature enough to be in those levels, like they would just create all this massive chaos, like just because everything is instant. But if we're here in this training ground of Earth and everything is so dense, like it takes a long time, a long focus, a long, making that desire as realistic as you can in your mind, then it happens. And then it's like that validation. It's like, yeah, man, that's what we are. And then like that's what I really am aiming for. It's not the thing itself. It's kind of like yeah, you're right, that reassurance.
Yeah. I mean, I love the saying I heard in yoga one time where it's we're not human beings trying to become spiritual, but we're foremost spiritual beings trying to have a human experience.
Mhm.
So, in a way, kind of trying to be spiritual is a funny concept within itself, because how can you try to be something that you already are?
Oh, right.
And I got this wisdom the one time, no, well, twice. I did one time ayahuasca and one time the other thing. I forget what it's called. It's San Pedro or something like that, with a Peruvian shaman. And it was one of the most profound experiences I had. And it resonated deeply with me because it was the feelings I had were very similar to when I had a near-death experience, where it was just this complete feeling of being as if I'm enlightened. Like any question I asked, I knew the answer instantly. I could see 360 degrees, around. I remember feeling that there was a purple flower behind me, and I would turn around and look, and there really was a purple flower. So I was in this ecstatic state of incredible love, incredible peace. And I kept on like freaking out that it's going to leave me the day after, when the drug, the feeling of the effect is gone. So I kept on like obsessively. I was like, oh my God, I got to write this down. I got to write this down before I lose it. I got to know that it's real. And then the San Pedro, which, has intelligence, it would talk to me, and it'd be like, calm down, just enjoy the moment. Don't try to hold on, surrender, be in the moment. And I'd be like, okay, okay, okay. And then 2 seconds later, no, 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 I got to find a pen and paper and write it down. And it's like, no, calm down, be in the moment. So this went on for a while. And finally, I heard loud and clear, why are you so trying to reach something that you already are?
Hmm.
And that was like such a moment of understanding for me the value of our human life. For the sake of being spiritual, we don't need to hate the human part. The
Hmm.
human part does have the confusion and the contrast and the desire and the attachment, and then the letting go. So and it creates, our human parts create problems so that we can find solutions. And in that journey from the problem to the solution, we discover who we are. We wake
Hmm.
up to our infinite consciousness, degree by degree by degree. And it's a beautiful journey. So for me, after that experience, my relationship turned from like trying to be enlightened, or I was like, oh my God, that's what I am already when I leave the body. So I'm here to have a different experience. And I recognize the importance and the value of the human experience.
Mm. See, that's your experience, and that's why I love that you've had that for yourself. And everyone has to have their own experience. Like
Yeah.
I've read books, tons of books. It's like to the point where I just want to know. You know what I mean? Like I want to know for myself, right?
Yeah.
Like I love hearing stories like is the near death experience in the book?
Yeah, I mean,
Is it?
shortly, because it is about manifestation and how we create our reality. So I didn't get like too deeply in there, but I do mention it a little bit.
What did that look like though? Like,
I was 16 and we were going interrailing with friends from school. And my father sent me, my mom didn't want me to go at all. So we're like 16, 17, roaming around Europe, and we were in southern France. And the the ocean was a little bit vicious, but I'm like, I don't care, nothing will happen to me, kind of a thing. They had like red flags and everything, so all of my friends stayed on the beach. I went in, And before I knew it, I was in this kind of a current that just took me under. It was like literally being in a washing machine. And I was so disoriented that every time I was trying to get up to the surface without realizing, I was like crashing, to the ground. And of course, there was panic. I was running out of breath. Just at the brink of running out of breath, I hear, like as if in a megaphone, a voice in my right ear that says, "This is the dream, and you're just about to wake up."
Hmm.
And as soon as I hear that, this like energy goes through my body, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. This is the dream. Home is on the other side. So forget about being afraid. All of a sudden, I'm kind of like excited about going to the other side. And as soon as I kind of went from the fear to the opening up to actually exiting, I swear to God, like the whole entire experience felt longer than my 16 years of being on the planet, because so many things simultaneously happened. One was I started seeing super, super fast moments of my life where I either gave love or I received love. So it was like, oh, yes, this love thing is so important. This is what we're made of. So there was that recognition. And then I kind of popped out of the body, and I could see, like, kind of my body version down there still struggling under the water. There was a very succinct feeling of different realities and different versions of me doing different things in different realities, but I couldn't like see into it. There was worry initially before this whole journey started. There was worry about how my parents would react, kind of feeling bad for them. But once I got out of the body, I'm like, they'll be fine. Once it's their turn, they'll be just as happy as I am right now to be leaving. And the level of love and the level of peace that I felt, I mean, like, I don't even know if I should call it love and peace, because that vibration doesn't even exist on the earth. It was just so incredible. So then the journey continued, and I remember kind of seeing myself in space, and the I dropped. There was no I, everything was one. And at that moment, I realized, oh my God, we're all God consciousness. And we are all a part of what we call the universe or God. We make that energy. And it was just incredible. As soon as I entered that moment of oneness, knowing without a shadow of doubt that oneness, fear from that side sounds ridiculous. I mean, it just doesn't exist. Anything bad happening on the planet is like, watching a movie, like a bad movie. At that point, if anything, let's say I was a mother and something was happening to my daughter on the earth, there's no problem with it, because it's a dream, it's temporary, it's going to be woken up from. It's all like all humorous from that perspective. And so once I had this aha, and it was a remembrance, it was a coming home, it wasn't anything like I was learning, it was just waking up. Then I thought to myself, like, oh, now that I remembered all of this, I wonder what it would be like to be on earth now with all this knowledge, because I thought I would retain that consciousness once I came back. Oh boy, was that not true. So as soon as I had the thought, bam, I was in the body. And I just like naturally came up to the surface. Another big wave came. This time I knew it wasn't going to do anything to me. I completely surrendered to it. And the wave kind of, carried me back to the shore. And then, of course, I ran for my life. And I was just in pure ecstasy for 3 days. And then, as if none of that happened, I went right back into my misery.
Doubting the experience, probably.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, I love all of that.
Exactly.
I just, again, it's very similar to a lot of the experiences that people have had. And it's hard for some skeptics to wrap their brains around that, because of the whole, we are in these individualized bodies, these vehicles, and along with that comes the ego, which says you're not that, you're here. This physical reality is evidence that you are here in this reality. Like this is it. Like, knock on the wood, how can this be energy? It's hard. Like, things like that, Newtonian physics. And
Exactly.
but I believe in there is an awakening happening, and I think that a lot of more people are becoming awaken to the fact that there's just some things that we need to look more into, and our spirituality is one. And then I'm not talking about religious dogmas. I'm talking about like, what is it that we are? Like, going back to ancient philosophy, right? The Oracle of Delphi, or however you say that, know thyself. Like, what is that? Question that. Like, how do you know that person? How do you know Ezra? Like, what is she? Like, how do you go inward? Is it through meditation? And then how do you keep going deeper in meditation? You talk about meditation techniques in the book, which I love, by the way. Speaking of which, have you ever gone like really deep in meditation where you've almost got back to that place of like that near death? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it took many, many years, but especially in Hawaii, because the energetics there are so kind of wild. You just kind of feel you're meditating without meditating. It really has a very strange energy, Hawaii, in that sense. There would be, after the yoga and after the meditation, like in the lying down, I would say it started happening in the last 4 years. It didn't used to happen before that, but just really kind of, having this other experiences, like talking to people. How can I describe it? Like, I'll be snoring and there's the awareness that I'm snoring, so I should be sleeping, but I'm not, and I'm having this entire experience in another realm. And sometimes it'll be like kind of going into nothingness, and when I come back, let's say, I hear the alarm or whatever, there'd be like a mini shock, and just for 10 seconds or so, like a confusion of like, oh my God, who am I? What am I? Where am I? What is going on? Complete kind of loss of time and space. Because when we enter that quantum field, which is available to all of us, some people get into it through art, some people get into it through meditation. But when we get into that quantum space, as was the near-death experience, really there's no time and there's no space. So we can download a lot of information, really, from our own wisdom back to this, more conditioned mind. According to my research, and that's exactly what the near-death experience felt, because I researched this after the near-death experience. I didn't even know there was such a thing called near-death experience back then. And when my couple of friends told me, that what I was saying was weird, or I maybe hit my head too hard onto a stone, I kind of shut that part of me down for a long time. But later, when I started researching, on a soul level, just a very small part of us actually comes into the body. A much larger part of our energy kind of stays behind. So in meditation, it's possible to connect to that wider perspective that is always there. It's our inner being, it's our true self, higher self, whatever people, I don't like the word higher self, as if like, this character here is the lower one, all this hierarchy. No, it's the others, it's the more of us.
Different frequency of us, right? Like different vibration. I've been reading a lot of William Buhlman material recently. He's one of the leaders in out-of-body techniques, right? His philosophy is there's different, obviously different, not obviously, some people don't even know that, but there are different layers of us as souls, or as consciousness, where out of body, he says that out of body experiences are more so of us going inward, not necessarily going out of the body. Like, you're shedding this vehicle, you're entering into an energetic version of ourselves, and then that has a that is more dense than the next version of us. And there's different way many different versions of ourselves that are just on these different levels of frequency. And as you tap into the inner versions of yourself, and as you raise your frequency, you start understanding that, and you open up a whole bunch of knowledge that we're just not capable of having in these vehicles, this physical, this brain of ours, just because of, just not capable of holding all the knowledge in the universe. So I've been toying with techniques, and I've had some pretty fascinating meditations just listening to his stuff. He does a lot of stuff with Monroe Institute. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
Yeah. I heard about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So he facilitates like an out of body course over there. And some of the meditations have been pretty fascinating where like my eyes are closed, but like I'm starting to experience like visions. Like I just like the other day, just started happening recently, where like I could see like my eyes are closed and it's not that I'm visualizing anything. It's like real
Mm.
3D, like water
Mm.
was dropping and hitting water. And then next thing you know, I'm like going through space. And then I was dreaming. I was coming out of a dream the other night. And this guy, it was like one of those when the bad guys are chasing you kind of thing. So like you guys, we were battling for some reason. And like, I don't know if I killed him or not. I don't know in the dream, but all of a sudden he starts floating towards me and then makes a left turn and starts going through this like void. And I'm like following him and it's like color. It's like 3D. I'm like, what is going on right now? Like, I'm not even sleeping. I'm like coming out of sleep. So it's through his techniques and meditations, like I'm experiencing a whole different reality of consciousness that I never knew. Like it's different than visualization. I'm sure you
It is
experienced it.
very, very different. It's because it's not like your mind, it's really like you're seeing a whole 3D happening.
Yeah.
It's no different than, watching a movie on a full screen. It's that real.
What happens after that? I guess. Like what happens next? does does it? I don't know. Do I get 360 like vision after that? I don't know. We'll find out. But we're here to talk about manifestation, right? And the thing that I hear the most is that, and you just said it from your near death experiences, we are the actor, the director, and producer of this, right? I want to know if the actor gets tired of this play, can he change the play?
Of course.
And
I
how do we do
mean,
that?
well, it's number one is examining our belief systems. For example, prosperity was always a challenge for me. I always had money problems ever since I could remember. And it's not like my parents were super poor. Yeah, they weren't super rich either. But whether it was like getting an allowance from my grandfather, or whether it was when I came to LA just trying to pay rent. I was a student. I wasn't really allowed to work, but I had to be able to pay rent. So I did all kinds of jobs to basically, survive. And when I got into my mid 30s, I became so sick and tired of constantly struggling around money because I could really feel that because I was so on the survival mode, I couldn't open up to other levels of my being. And that's the problem always about being in survival mode. There's that hierarchy, that pyramid, Maslow's pyramid
Mm-hmm.
as well. I mean, for self actualization, actually allowing ourselves to live abundantly is a very important step because that survival mode has us like so much in fear. We literally can't access the rest of us, such as creativity and joy and the higher frequencies of who we are. So I remember the moment, just like when I came to the US, what in our system we call a new being choice. When you reject who you have been being and you make a new being choice, a new decision to belong to a new reality. So I made that decision in my mid 30s, and I said, you know what, I am done. I am from now on, do or die. I don't care. I'm just going to belong to prosperity. That's it. I am going to experience abundance in my life. And as the saying goes, when the student is ready, the teacher shows up. I like to say, when the person is ready, the universe shows up. So I met my mentor about a week or two after that decision. The very first thing that he asked me was, he's like, do you remember your first memories around money? And I had never thought about something like that. And when I thought back, all of a sudden, a 7-year-old version of myself came into play. And I'm sitting in the house watching TV, and my grandparents and a bunch of their friends are in the living room talking. And there's a conversation going on amongst them where they're talking about a 23-year-old girl that was married off to a really kind of rich but old doctor. And the conversation is going on like this: oh, it's a good thing she married for money. That's what smart women do. Love is something so stupid. If a woman follows her heart, then she's like stupid. And I'm listening to this conversation and getting more and more livid as a 7-year-old. And because I'm young and I can't really interfere in their conversation, I instead go to the bathroom, lock myself into the bathroom. I look at the mirror and I say, I will always follow the way of love, and I will always say no to money. So as a 7-year-old self, I created at that moment, through the experience I was having, I arrived at a conclusion, a program, a self-created program, that money and love don't go together. They have to be separate. People either go in this direction or that direction. And I made a clear choice as to going in this direction. And that became my program, created as a 7-year-old. And that ruled my financial life until I woke up to that story in my mid-30s. So as soon as I saw, it was such an aha moment for me, because I realized I was the one who had set myself up for a limited financial experience for 35 years as a 7-year-old. A 7-year-old was ruling my financial life. So as soon as you see the ridiculousness of that, you're like, I'm not doing that. I'm not playing that game. There's a better game out there. And yeah, love and spirituality and money, they can all go together. Because really, nothing has a meaning other than the meaning we put on it. Mm-hmm. So this whole thing of like, oh, materialism is bad, it's just how we define it. To me now, not back then, because obviously I hated money up until that awakening moment. But really, all money is a symbol for the prosperity and the abundance that's all around. It's just a materialized version of something that's energy. And everything is energy foremost, including us. And then we have the material aspect of that. So since we're living in a material world where we can hold things, well, money is the holdable version of the abundance that is available to all. And if you can think of abundance, let's say replace it with oxygen. Who can blame me for having deep breaths? But just because I'm having deep breaths doesn't mean other people don't get to have enough oxygen. Sure. If they're not breathing deeply themselves, it's because that's their choice.
Yeah. I mean, clearing programs, a lot of it is programming, a lot of it. And it's like, we don't even know it really. It's like, you grow up, your kids, it's easy to get programmed, not just from, obviously that was a cell program, but just think about all the programming that we experience in society as our parents. And it's just a continuous kind of thing. Our parents are programmed by their parents, and exactly. So forth. And it's like this collective consciousness that influences everything. And then the awakening happens at some point, hopefully. And you start wondering, like, what else? Like, this is bad because I've always thought it was bad because of a belief system. And now I'm finding out that it's not really that bad, but it's just my interpretation of that. It's like the eye of the perceiver, right? Like the perception, my perception of this determines if it's bad or good. And what is good or bad? It's just two words, right? Like, what is a bad experience? It's what I perceive it to be. Exactly. And what is it good? So vice versa. And it's like, what do you want in your life, really? I mean, that's the question. Do you want money for ego purposes? Because the ego is empty. It's not really going to fulfill you. It's not going to make you any happier, because it's never going to be enough. Like the ego is never happy. It's like, makes you think that you're going to be happy.
Well, we have a different perspective on ego. Because ego, kind of like money, also has a bad rap, like as if it's a bad thing. And when we look at what ego means, it actually just means I in Latin. So when we say, oh, the ego is bad, we're actually saying I am bad. Or when we say, I want to get rid of my ego, it's like saying, well, I want to get rid of me. Or if we say, damn, this big ego of so-and-so. Well, I mean, ego just has a bad name.
Sure. I think it's interpretation. Like my interpretation of ego is totally different. Like mine is the small self, the not the I am, not the I. The I for me is something totally different. The I am to me is a sacred source of energy, right? And the ego to me is something that arises. I know what that is for me. Like I can see it in it isn't what I am. It is something that I identify as being, this identity that I think that I am, the role, the actor, but that actor comes with programmed um, conditioning that has triggers, like, so that ego has
Exactly.
triggers. So it's
Mhm.
like different, like, I guess it's different interpretations of that or
But
perceptions.
but it changed my life to change for me, my definition of ego after I met my teacher, because I had a similar kind of a background in regards to how I was taught the ego to be, especially coming from a yoga background. And as soon as I recognized through my mentor's definition and then through our own explorations with my husband, the ego is just according to us, just an anchor, a space holder for whatever beliefs we have decided to believe in, so that it can be experienced as a reality by us. Because if we didn't have the ego, we couldn't learn anything. When we learn to drive, at the beginning we're all like being super careful and we can't really, function. And then as soon as we learn it, it becomes automatic. It's the ego that's holding that knowledge in place, so it's like without thinking, automated. So in the same way as we come here to experience this earth space, time and space, we come up with all kinds of decisions about ourselves, about marriage, about men, about, women, about sex, about money. And then that programming, I really do see it like a program. We do the programming, the screen of the laptop is the life reflecting whatever programming we put in, and ego is the database where
Hmm.
all those belief systems are held. So when we don't like the ego, in a way, all those decisions, most of those decisions on top of it come from the time we're children. It comes actually from a very innocent place. For, as a 7-year-old deciding money and love don't go together.
Hmm.
Or, maybe, I don't know, somebody's father hit them over the head because they couldn't figure out math and said, "You're stupid." And, the 7-year-old or 8-year-old believed, "Oh my God, I'm stupid." So then the ego holds that. And when that small self comes, it is a small sense in the sense of our wounded child. So when we don't like the ego, we also are pushing away and separating the inner child, trying to reach us from whatever the wound is or the limitation is. So to me, I've seen a lot of value in befriending the ego, seeing it as a function, as a mechanism, because when we do decide something new, again, we need the ego function to anchor it in reality so that it can be experienced by us.
Sure. No, all the experiences are necessary for our development. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong by that. It's I also try to look at it like, I try to expand my awareness too, right? To see, like, when I am anchored in that moment of, like, maybe getting triggered by something, maybe anger or some type of emotion, like, I get drawn like a pinpoint of my attention to in that situation where I'm all in. Like, I am the actor 100% in that drama. If I can just for a second like catch it where I'm like, all right, this isn't really what I am or who I am or who I want to be. So, like, take a step back and try to find like a generalized emotion to kind of deflate that awareness, to draw it back and then gain that awareness of, like, this is just the body, or this is just the ego, or this is just this program running right now. It's not really who
Yeah,
you are. You know what I mean? Like,
that's
I
the
try to gain
program.
awareness of that and just say, like, you can see the body, you can see it, like, you can feel it in certain places in your body of energy when you're like getting
Yeah.
really pissed off about something. You feel it in your gut. You're like, that's the body reacting. That's the program running in this situation. Like, it's already there. It's just something in my environment has triggered this, and that's the program that's running. Am I the program? No. How do I gain that awareness? And then through meditation, you can kind of, um, I try to tap into that awareness and, like, feel yourself expand, and then that's when, like, you start opening up a little bit more, and you start kind of, what I do, um, tapping back into what I truly am, and I can kind of anchor myself into that, and try to, gain
But
some.
those trigger points, those times that we do get triggered, are amazing entry points for us to go into the system and find what belief system is. So, like, to give presence to
Mhm.
that trigger, to like love it, to see where it's in the body, And oftentimes when you go into the inner child work, it's just, again, a decision we made so innocently, that due to the fear, because the ego's job is to protect us. So if I have decided money and love don't go together, it's the ego's job to unconsciously protect me from money. So I'm going to keep on making decisions, bad decisions, up until I change the belief system. People think it's bad luck or good luck. It's got nothing to do with luck. If that's the command we've given the ego, it's going to take us in that direction. For example, I want to give a relationship example. I was never a jealous person at all. I was always so relaxed. I just didn't have it, or so I thought. When I met with my now husband, then boyfriend, he had a very big jealousy problem that we, together worked on it, and he got over it in 6 months. But I never, ever experienced myself as a jealous person up until we got married. Shortly after we got married, I couldn't even recognize myself. And, because we had gone through the journey with him to begin with, because he was like super jealous, and it just took us about 6-7 months to, have him have his healing journey. But I mean, I like wake up one day and I'm like this woman that I don't know. I'm like, where did this jealousy come from? Like basically like super paranoid, looking at his emails, looking at his messages, making up stuff. And finally I said, my love, help me. Like, so I got super triggered. I don't know where this is coming from. I've never experienced this feeling. And you don't feel good about yourself. It's like as if this monster is coming out of you. And so again, we just did the work, and it just ended up tying into something so innocent, so beautiful. And it just took the marriage for it to get triggered. Again, I'm very young. I'm at some sort of a party where the grown-ups are there, and it's my girlfriend's birthday party. And there's this very prominent doctor and his wife that everyone's waiting for, and everyone's talking about them before the couple arrives. So as a kid, I'm like all, really curious. When they arrive, he's a really handsome doctor, and the wife is just beautiful. I remember looking at them and saying, when I grow up, this is the kind of relationship I want. I want to shine like they're shining. So then we all sit at the table, and at one point, and the doctor's sitting right across from me. And I mean, he was really gorgeous. I'm like looking at him as an 8 or 9-year-old. I drop my napkin by mistake, and I go under the table to get my napkin. And I see the doctor's hands on the leg of the woman next to him, not the wife. Mm. And I get like my whole body gets completely like shocked, because back then we didn't have so many movies. We didn't have internet. Like I didn't even know of the concept of cheating. I didn't know such a thing existed as a 9-year-old. And at that moment, as I go like with my, nervous system, I go, successful men that get married cheat. That's the programming. And sure enough, the universe is going to get you to face your whatever decision you made. We got married with my husband. 2 months later, he released a book about the subject matter we teach. It became an insane national bestseller in Turkey, like over 1 million copies or something. So the marriage and the success happened at the exact same time, and boom, the programming got triggered. Mm. And I felt like a horrible person. There was obviously judgment, like, oh my God, this is not me, and I'm being so ugly, but you can't help yourself. But when you just go in there and look what it's about, it's just something always so innocent is right behind it.
Well, how did you get to that point where you could find it though? Like, how did you find that memory?
Well, it's stuff that we've developed over time with my husband as we worked with my mentor, Daryl Rutherford. First of all, we worked with him for 20 years, like every week. So after a while, we become kind of a pro to finding it. But for the listeners out there, when we get triggered, we feel it, as you said, somewhere in the body, like either here, or we'll feel like the stomach is hurting. Someone's kicked us in the stomach. So one of the ways to do it is you just close your eyes. First of all, you don't judge it. You don't belittle that part of yourself, because we all have our shadows. And it's very important to love our shadows and to see it as a human experience to begin with. If there's judgment, there's no understanding. If there's understanding, there's no judgment. The two can't be together. So you focus onto the part of the body where that trigger, you're feeling it, and you just ask yourself the question. You say, when did I first meet this feeling? At which age or which memory? And you just keep asking that to yourself by staying connected to your body and the emotion. And immediately stuff will start coming up. Either a 5-year-old or 7-year-old or 9-year-old version will show up, or you'll actually get to the memory.
Hmm. Wow. Yeah, I can feel. Yeah, I got to start doing that kind of the shadow work a little bit more, because I definitely I feel, that stomach, that sharp pain when something hits, right? And like, I don't care who you are. Like, you could be the best meditator in the world. When something hits you, like when you have that
Yeah.
program that you don't even know about, the shadow work Carl Jung talks about, like
Yeah.
when those things kick, I don't care who you are, like you're going to feel something. And it's like, like you said, the most important part is not to judge it. It's very easy to say, to like suppress it and be like, I'm not dealing with that. I don't know what that is. I'm not dealing with that. It's kind of like looking at it. And I have to do that more, because I'm easy to suppress it, because I'm just like, well, why do I don't know what that is. I don't know where that's at. And that's the importance of looking at it, to shine light on it and to figure out what it is. So it opens you up to different types of opportunity, more energy, like creation, stop blocking some of this energy that you're supposed to feel. Um, when you start doing that though, like when you start finding these programs and eliminating, not eliminating them, but kind of letting the energy flow more, um, did you start realizing that you were able to create more things in your life,
Oh, yeah.
as far as your reality, or change your reality?
Oh,
Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so from where you started to where you're at now, do you, I guess the question is, did you create the reality that you wanted?
Oh, yeah, I did. I did. I mean, I just love my relationship with my husband. It really is a fairy tale now for, I believe it's been 18 years. It's unbelievable. And I always wanted to do something where I could help other people and see their change, their transformation, their connection to their soul. Well, I ended up having my own business, doing that. Um, when I was in LA and we had met with my boyfriend and we were still in that phase of like auditioning, I remember saying, I don't want to be at the beck and call of other people, to get picked and to be liked by all these people in order to, have a career or make money. Like, we got to do our own thing. I remember saying that so many times. I had no clue as to how that was going to manifest, but the desire was there and the focus was there, and I kept that alive. And it happened to come to me in the form of life coaching. So I always said, for example, I don't want to work more than 4 hours. And really, we do have a business where, we do the coaching or the workshops or whatever certification for 4 hours. And then the rest of the time is up to us. And I always wanted to have the experience of making, over $1 million. And that happened too. So what else can I say? But to me, that's the thing. As soon as we grow more, then through that expansion already, new desires are born. So then we're like having the whole journey all over again. And that's why it's very important to enjoy the journey rather than be attached to the goodies that we get at the end. As long as we're enjoying the journey, discovering who we are, seeing it as a game, seeing it as like a little puzzle, and just having fun with it, the goodies will come. That's been my experience. And my biggest mistake was, I thought the more my consciousness grew, the less shadows I would have. I actually saw the opposite is true. Because if we think of ourselves as trees, the more the branches like expand and become bigger and reach out, the deeper the roots have to go. And as the roots are going deeper, we're going to start hitting rocks that we would have, unless we had expanded, we wouldn't have even had a clue that they were there.
Wow.
So I think our light and our shadows, they kind of like grow together. You
Hmm.
discover more. And then that's when I understood, why there's like all these gurus where they do all these, great work, whatever, on the planet. And then you hear like this horrible scandal about them. And you're like, oh my God, I thought this person was this and this, and look at what they did. Well, that's how it functions. So to love our shadows, to see that as a part of the human experience is very important. When the shadows are repressed, there's we create separation and disintegration. When the shadows and the ego is loved, then things begin to integrate.
Mm, I love that. How can people connect with you?
Ah, oh my God, it's already been an hour.
I know.
Well, thank you so much. Well, we have our website, our English website we just created. We're so proud of it. IKENESRA.now.com. That's IKEANDESRANOW.com. People can leave their emails, and whenever we open a workshop, we'll make sure to send out an email. And Money Does Grow on Trees, The Myths We Create and Live By, is available on Amazon.
Pick that book up because it's great. It's got a lot of great philosophy in it, a lot of great practical guides, and her stories in there as well, Ezra's story. I loved it. I think a lot of my listeners will love it. I think your teachings and your wisdom, your experiences, I think are truly valuable. What are you working towards now, like manifesting?
Actually, our next step is we've been doing our certification program. We started creating that 4 years ago to certify other people to be life coaches like us. And that's been our favorite program because it lasts for a year and a half. And just the way people turn their lives around is amazing to us. So far, we've just done it in Turkish because our original books have been in Turkish. Our next manifestation is to open up what we teach to the English world,
Mm,
to the English speaking people. Yeah, that's why I wrote the book. It's the first one in English.
awesome. Ezra, I can't thank you enough for joining the show.
Thank you for your questions, for your sincerity. It was really a lot of fun.